All of a sudden, a career that you think you're going to have and have for a long time, and it's all you know, it's over. What am I meant to do with my life? I really struggled with that, a sense of betrayal. How can you give yourself to a system for the system to drop you? I'm one of 14 children. My father had a first marriage with 2 boys and a girl. That relationship ended, and my mother and father have 11 together. 10 pregnancies. I'm a twin, identical twin. So there you go. When I was 16 years old, my family moved to Harvey Bay. At that time, there was 6 or 7 children at home. Stephen and I, my twin brother, went to the St. Mary's School in Maryborough. So my older sister, Louise, when she was about 18 or 19, she joined the Army Reserves in Victoria. We were living in Melbourne at the time. And I guess that was quite an influence. Thrill-seeking, excitement, adventure. The recruitment material is quite attractive to someone who doesn't know what they're getting into. Abseiling, all that sort of stuff. It looks like a whole lot of fun and an adventure. I actually joined at the time with my twin brother Stephen and my older brother Peter, or Pedro, during the recruit training, things like that. There's a lot of opportunity to go across to the regular army. However, my parents obviously have to sign consent for that, and you have to finish school. So I finished year 12, and most of my year 11 and 12, and as with Stephen, we spent a lot of time doing Army Reserve stuff anyway, whether that be attending courses. It was great. And so from there, it's looking at options. I did a job transfer to go into the regular army, changed to the Armoured Corps, finished the training down there, and then everyone just posted out. So I posted to Brisbane along with several of my mates. It was only about 12 or 18 months there, and took the risk to post to Townsville. The incentive behind that was there was, overseas deployments coming up for Afghanistan, and they were, down to have one. So I was rolling the dice for the people that were down there to take that risk, because it's, you want to do that. You've trained your job, to do deployments. Straight away it was preparation training for Afghanistan. Virtually 12 months of lead-up training, field exercises and training for deployment, and part of that is the administration behind that too. Everyone's got to get passports, they've got to prepare wills, they've got to, sort out their affairs as a just in case, Sounds stupid. You get told, okay, everyone's got to sort out their wills. You book an appointment with the legal officer and you do your will. You don't really look beyond that. The same as you put in your passport application or go get passport photos for it. At the time you don't think, oh well, I'll just put mum and dad and on my will as the beneficiaries. We were due to fly out, I think it was on my 21st birthday, but it was postponed. So I had my 21st birthday, and then we went over about 4 or 5 days later. Most of the people around you are anywhere between 19 to early 20s. So I was a cavalry crewman, so driver essentially, but I was also part of the vehicle servicing, maintaining basically the data bank of making sure the vehicles are serviceable, really. Also, there was periods of people going on short-term leave and that, and like our squadron was a resupply sort of squadron. I guess the word is hearts and minds stuff, and meeting with local tribes and having tea and things like that, and basically a lot of training as well, because you're there it's a mentoring group to train the Afghani National Army and police force. So they're, the idea was a period for them to transition and be in control of their own country, being away from your usual supports. There's constant threat as well, like obviously you're in a war zone. I recall the day that we landed and I was surprised by the reaction of the people who were leaving, stood on a vehicle handover. When we were there and we heard whistles over the top and we're like, oh, what's that? And then all these alarms started going off. What it was rockets being fired onto the base. There's several of them. There was like, and they're like, oh, don't worry, that's just something going out. It's not coming in. And then all of a sudden we were sitting in the back of this armoured vehicle waiting. Sirens go off. It's like, take cover, incoming type thing, and surround the whole base. I think what a lot of people are lucky about is with these IED, improvised explosive devices, is people, they get hit by them. We had convoys, they were always hit by them. It's when you actually, oh shit, that was close. You look up and there's one pointing down at you out of a tree, which started occurring, or you've driven over the top of it and then it's set off to the vehicle behind you, or it's, there's a lot of close calls like that. But our combat engineers are fantastic, trained so well, and probably the hardest job there, clearing and doing mine with mine labs, metal detectors, and clearing pathways for vehicles. Sometimes, for whatever reason, something's not picked up, a hazard of the job, things happen. And I remember we drove over the top of one at one stage, and then the truck behind us, it actually, however it was set up, it didn't actually hit the truck. It went off with all these Afghanis. There's an Afghani truck and all their feet hanging off the back of it and out the back tailgate, and this bloody thing's gone off after they've right behind them. Like, holy, and that's just a normal truck, not armoured or anything like that. And holy shit, like, bloody hell. I mean, I've just driven over the top of that, and that was one behind me. So whatever reason, it didn't detonate the way that must have been intended, because no one died. Well, everyone gets a period of leave. So you go back through there. I went back to Harpy Bay 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something. Yeah, and then back to work. So I had some other health issues at the time, which sort of made it worse. I was ingrown hairs, and I had to have surgery for it, and it became infected, and I couldn't do anything. It was quite infected, like I had like a staph infection, and in the humidity and things like that up there in the sweating in the middle of summer, it just tended to make it worse. During that time as well, it's sort of, you can't do anything and you're down, your mood's low, everything is not working in your advantage when you're stuck in a hospital for several weeks trying to get this infection sorted, and not good. And it took a long time to actually heal from that, because I had an open wound from an abscess, basically. I just wasn't coping in that. I never experienced anything like that. All of a sudden I couldn't do things. From that, I just sort of was back at work, and still I had to be so careful of this because I had an open wound, and even with dressings and that on it, it was still quite an issue. It didn't feel right, and which led to drinking, which led to sort of not caring about much at all. Behaviour traits that I didn't know I had. Wasn't me. I didn't feel like myself, like being nasty and not worrying about anything else. Fatigue, difficulty concentrating, irritable but angry, and never really been that much of an angry person, to be honest. And it did lead me to seek some assistance in that way. A friend of mine, like a close friend, had seen someone for support and that, and it's like, well, I think you should do this. Come on, mate, let's do that. And took me along to see a mental health nurse or something like that. And from there, I received treatment through the psychologist. I had a period of time off work, went back to work for a bit, got diagnosed with depression. sort of presented, fronted with these options. I can either medical discharge or, change of job or go back to work and do this, but I don't think there's much chance of that. So all of a sudden I was presented with these options, none of which I really liked. Go back to a place where, I can't do well at, or I've had time off work and it's hindrance me. I was due to do some extra training courses and that outside of the area, and they're off the cards now. I'm not medical grade 1. When it comes to then changing job type to something that requires more academic input, being scared of that as well. From there, so I went down the medical separation process or discharge process, and that I really struggled with, actually, just because all of a sudden, when a career that you think you're going to have and have for a long time, and it's all it's over. What can I do? What am I meant to do with my life? I really struggled with that, a sense of betrayal. How can you give yourself to a system for the system to drop you? You have a depressive illness accepted by the Department of Veteran Affairs. Why is it so hard to access support for that? I was struggling with sleep. I started drinking more. It was impacting the relationships around me. I was isolated myself.
Like, Daniel's a very gentle and a very calm person, and he started having trouble sleeping. I guess it was those accumulation of things, but mainly when he started when he wasn't sleeping, and he'd get a bit snippy, and that's not like him. And so that was sort of the first struggle.
Ended up at one point in time with risk-taking behaviours, a big one. With one stage there was self-harm as well, and through the risk, drinking, self-harm, all that sort of stuff. But also I cut myself quite badly, presented to the emergency department at Townsville, stitched up and sent away, and at the time asking, why can't they do a referral? I've got this white card of DVA, why can't you send me up to the Martyr Hospital or something for the mental health unit? And all too hard. You got to get prior approval. There was all these roadblocks.
The doctor was very dismissive, even though when I tried to it felt like there was a lot of shame about it, and treated as if, you've just done this, you're an inconvenience, you're wasting our time. That was very much the gist that I got, and I felt like I had to justify, he was in the army, he's on these medications, he's got this and this, and it wasn't enough.
Not long after that, I presented to the emergency department again, and I I waited there. It was lack of sleep. I hadn't slept for a week or something. I eventually, through that, had an admission to the public mental health unit there.
He didn't have a DVA gold card at the time. He just wanted to go into hospital for a bit of reprieve and a bit of a mental break. Daniel didn't want to see me for the first few days when he was in the mental health unit, which is quite confronting, but thankfully we had met a couple who were in their 40s who'd been through all the same things, and she was able to sort of normalise and say, look, this has sort of happened with my husband, it's not a personal thing, sort of normalised and made me feel like, okay, it's not about me that he doesn't want to see me, it's about perhaps he might feel a bit of shame, or there's feelings there and he doesn't want you to see him like this.
From there, so at the time I owned a house in Townsville. While I was in there, we just decided we need to go back, we need to be back near family for family support. And Jess said, I suggest let's just sell the house, who cares? And we relocated back to our Harvey Bay. Jess she'd always worked in travel since she was about 15 or something, or 14, and she had gone back to work here. She served a customer. Jess shared a little bit of her life, and they said, well, you need to get him to come and see me at this place. Tom was the person's name, right? He's a Vietnam veteran, and to this day he's still good friends with him and Tom Jenner's wife, Janine.
While I was on holidays, Daniel walked into the centre.
I dare say, knowing the way Tom is, would have been quite persistent if I hadn't been in yet. I remember Jess saying to me, Daniel, can you just go do this? You just have to, let's just go sort it out.
Because Jess must have kept on hounding him. And at that time there, Daniel was in a very bad way. He was self-harming. He was at the lowest ebb I've ever seen a lot of these veterans. He was one step away from doing something stupid. And it wasn't for Jess, I think he would have.
And down at the Vietnam veterans in Harvey Bay, sort of led me and fostered me on a righteous path, I guess, of trying to be better and including Jess and I in their various events and things, and in their environment at the Veterans Advice Centre. The welcoming environment of that with a generation of people, some 40 to 50 years older than us, easy, of this Vietnam Veteran Association group of people and their families, their spouses and their networks.
But when he came in, it was fortunate because on the day he came in and saw Ken Cowell. Ken, he's about 80 years of age now. Lovely bloke, he's an ex-Navy chap.
Well, I'd entered somewhere where I was extremely uncomfortable. I could imagine me, if I was a fly on the wall, sitting in there by myself, waiting to see this bloke, and I'm uncomfortable, sitting on a chair, probably that. But I remember walking in there, being greeted quite warmly, nicely, I'm like, wow, this other old bloke, you want a coffee or something, make me a cup of tea, I'm like, all right, yeah, all right. Being welcomed, and over time, like I would have been terribly uncomfortable sitting there. Over time, I'd come in more. I wasn't getting asked 22 questions or 21 questions rather about myself and, what's wrong with you type thing. It was essentially a judgment-free zone and a welcoming zone.
And when I came back from the holidays, Daniel came in to see me, and he'd started to settle down a bit by this stage because he'd started talking to people. But it wasn't only Ken, the others all come around and started talking to him, and he felt like he was non-threatening environment, no one criticising him, which is what we're there for. That's what you're there.
We were invited to things like a Melbourne Cup function or a lunch or something like that, and we started becoming friends with these older people, many of which we're still very good friends with, and that informal support network started helping out more,
He started feeling like he was valued because what happened, I saw potential in Daniel. I said to him, would you like to do a welfare course? And he said, I'd love to. I said, because what I want, I said, to me, I'm an old fart. I'm no good talking to a 20, 30-year-old. I said, your war was different to my war. Your culture is different to my culture.
Well, why don't you try this? Why don't you go along to this training, Daniel, and become a welfare worker and go out to our older or unwell veterans and check in with them. So I started doing that, which I enjoyed.
With that there, he was doing a good job. I said, right, I'll recommend you for an advocate's training. So he went and did advocate's training, and he was qualified to take him to the Veterans Review Board. But his self-esteem started coming back, and I think that is the main thing. When he got out of the army, he had no self-esteem, he felt useless, and Daniel was a social worker. He became a renal worker, social worker for 2 years. And he was doing a terrific job. Everyone there respected him.
From there, like I was talking to more and more, I know from my own experience trying to, access the barriers to assistance, like accessing healthcare through the DVA white card or trying to get recognised and, there's prior approval, or we only accept the gold card holders or that. These people really don't know much what they're talking about. And I'm a big believer in if you don't know something, you find out. If it doesn't seem right, look into it. And so I'm like, why is this something that is made, why is this being made so hard? It's not meant to be that hard. So from there I did more of these courses and that, and started helping other younger veterans access their DVA entitlements so they could receive the care and access the care and improve that way. At least that's one weight off their shoulders. So from there we formalised what was an informal support group, our own not-for-profit veterans organisation. We were looking at the traditional aspects of peer support, really, and informal peer support, and helping each other through welfare, well-being and advocacy support. We took over at Harvey Bay Officeworks barbecues, right? Every Saturday we'd be there selling sausages. And Officeworks would donate sausages and the bakery bread. We wouldn't make much money. It was very poor. It wasn't about that though. It was about spending time with each other and the mateship and supporting each other, the informal side of it. And many that were volunteering, you had younger people, veterans, or you had a mix of some older, the Vietnam veterans, some younger, and all of a sudden they intermingling, and it can be about anything but that informal support. It's getting people out of the house, it's getting people into a healthy environment, except for eating too many sausages. They're not at the pub, and they're supporting each other in a healthy way. They're not gambling, they're not at the pub. Well, we had old blokes there one of them he was very, very unwell, and one of the Vietnam vets, and physically couldn't do anything, but he loved going down there just to get dropped off. It just lifted up his spirits and everything, and you'd see him just lighten up, just being there and being around us and sitting on his walker or turning a sausage.
Unfortunately, he applied for his job and never didn't get it. Yeah, it almost broke him again. With that's when I sat down and spoke to him again and said, right, think about going out on your own. And that's when he started up, and he did it all himself. He set his business up, and he's got Veterans Matters, and now he's got a clientele of people who respect him and help him. I'm still getting phone calls from veterans who want to go and see Daniel. He came to me for help. Now other veterans and war widows and children of veterans are now coming to him for help, which I applaud him.
The concept of moral trauma is, I guess, that sense of betrayal. You give yourself to something and then to be dropped. Trying to rationalise that in yourself. I tried to be good. How can we be doing all this stuff and then just to be forgotten about? How do we be mentally healthy and maintain? And one of the things that I am a believer of is we have our cars, we get them serviced. If we don't get them serviced, they fail on us or cause bigger issues. But my sort of little theory is, well, how about if we think of our mental health like that, is if we go and have a service once a year, once every 6 months with a psychologist and going for those regular check-ins. It's really easy to fall down the path and for men in particular, is really hard on yourself and beat yourself up because of this, I'm struggling with this mental illness or this physical illness or with this thing, and then to beat yourself up about it, and in terms of holding yourself accountable to life commitments, your work, you're like, well, what do I do? You're being beaten up and then finding a way forward out of that. You need to bring in your support network. I met my wife Jess when I was home in Harvey Bay on leave from Afghanistan. I think I must have been about 20 and she was 18.
I met Daniel at the Bay Central Tavern here about, I think, 13 years ago. Yeah, went out with my mum and some friends, and there was like, oh, there's some army boys there tonight. And I thought, oh no, army boys, I don't really. His brother introduced us, and then somehow we met.
She ended up coming up to Townsville, stood with me and supports me to this day. And one thing I say to Jess is, you're my biggest, most amazing supporter, but she's also my biggest critic. When she's a critic, she gives constructive feedback, I like to say. During my worst, I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she hung around and didn't run through my own issues, and when people are going through struggles of their mental health or mental illness, you're not nice to other people and not being able to think of your behaviours and your actions. So to this day, lots of things I regret, in my own behaviours and sorry about in our relationship. We're still together. We ended up getting married and welcomed our first child, Lily. So just had her first birthday.
So this is our sweet Lily. Can you say hi? Waving? Waving. Can you blow kisses? Mwah. You're shaky.
They say that you don't remember life before the child, but I do remember, and I just love it much more now. We both do. So what Anzac Day means to me, it's a time of remembrance. It's a time of acknowledging sacrifice, but it's a time of mateship as well, and checking in with your friends, whether that be in an event or phone call, or your fellow service friends, or spending time with one another and having fun, sharing experiences. But it's around support essentially as well.